Okay, welcome to Cleveland Heights City Council Committee of the Whole meeting. It's February 3rd, 6:03 p.m. Hattie, please call the roll.
Here.
Huda.
Here, sorry.
Petrus. Larson.
Here.
Maddox.
Here.
Russell.
Here.
Posh.
Here.
You want to mention Petrus?
Okay, and Jim Petrus is here on Zoom. First thing we have on the agenda is legislative review. If we only had a law director, we can probably get through some of this. Okay, so first readings for consideration, adoption. We have resolution 017, resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a contracts to accept the grant from Western Reserve Area Agency on Aging. This is to fund transportation. Anybody have any questions on this?
I was just curious if we've done this, it looks like we've done this before.
Yes.
I just want confirmation. Thank you.
Any other questions? Resolution 018.
Mr. President.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there we go.
I thought there was some issue that we did our own transportation.
What do you mean?
Don't we have our own buses and we hire our own transportation people? The Office of the Aging?
Yes,
I think we use both.
well, we don't, yes, we do use both, but I don't think we have enough drivers right now.
This legislation also is a reimbursement. It authorizes a reimbursement for expenses incurred
Okay.
during our program. That's how I read it at least, so.
New tax bill.
President Kudo,
Yes.
I'm reminding myself, and I'm going to ask everybody to remember that there are people at home that can't hear very well because the audio in here is not real clear, so we're all going to be needing to speak up.
Okay.
Thank you.
018. Resolution appointing Bob Brown as a member of the city planning
Anybody need a hamburger?
commission. Any comments, questions about that? 019, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an extension of an agreement with Millennium Strategies for grant writing services. This is a 3-month extension. I believe.
2 months.
2 months, thank you.
Thank you. Wait a minute.
Okay, thank you.
That got changed.
All right, thank you.
Well, we certainly benefited from that.
Yes.
Ordinance 020, an ordinance authorizing and approving the presentation of entertainment programs in Keene Park for the 2025 year and declaring the necessity, oh, sorry, I don't need to read that. So this raises ticket prices from $200 to $300 at least. Doesn't mean that tickets will be that price, but they can go up to that limit.
And did you guys receive the
Yeah,
memo that was?
we did get a cover sheet on that. I do know that entertainment, especially musical entertainment, has just skyrocketed since COVID. And I know they want to get as, they don't want to, they meaning the people who do the hiring at Keene Park, want to have the leeway to get as much top entertainment as we can. I also wonder, but there's nobody really here to answer this question. If this is also partially an attempt to make the books balance at the end of the day, so that we don't have a deficit. Because that's obviously another way to do it.
I think you're correct in your first assessment. It is act driven. I mean, you're right, it's gotten a lot more expensive to do that. And like I said, this is 5 weeks in, but that's a pretty good ticket price, but people are paying it. And so if you want to get one of those acts, they have that scaling mechanism to say, okay, well, it's gonna be $300. It's not, a garage band. It's something that's pretty popular and they bring some guarantees and obviously working through some contractual things too on that side of it too. So I hope that partially explains part of it. I don't think it's a, hey, fees are this much. Historically, I mean, you had a pretty good season last year, from what I understand.
Revenues were up.
Yeah, and that's, people are gonna pay it, and then until they don't. You know, you can say, hey, gas is this, or what this, if they don't pay it, they won't come, then you'll know by, you know, on that side too, but I think that's an attempt to, you know, obviously get an act that would maybe be able to charge that.
And do you think it's fair to say that this does not mean ticket prices are going up?
Absolutely, right, it's gonna be, if an act says, hey, I'm gonna charge $200,000, well, then you may have just priced themselves out of Cape Park.
Right,
Because I don't know if there's a number of seats in there to be able to do that, I'm using rough numbers. Because they can't do 100,000 there, they can do, so their venue fits into certain acts that will do that. But a lot of those older acts now are trying to do, you know, 8,000 seat venue, or, and it makes sense, but they still charge a, you know, a pretty good penny to come and.
well, you've seen Lot 3, what is it, Lot?
Yeah,
this and that,
yeah.
You've seen
Well,
that hold.
yeah, that
How
was
many people did that hold, just out of curiosity?
a really, really good day, maybe 8,000, but it was free.
Yeah,
Except for maybe you know, a better cover band, it would be $5.
Right, right.
And they were covered, you know what they called, they
Yeah.
were knockoffs, they weren't the real thing, but then they would get some other ones like,
tribute.
yeah, and they were pretty good, and it was a nominal a little bit more, to be able to cover that. But some of the acts I've seen come to Kane Park, those are like popular. And people are filling it up.
And some of them just wanna sell VIP tickets, you know, maybe a small number of those that where you maybe in a meet and greet or just that you sit in the first, you know, 5 rows and it'll be $100 more to do that.
It could, yeah. it
So
could be.
everybody else might stay the same.
Right.
But there might be this very
I'm not
limited.
exactly sure on the VIP part, but it depends, a lot of that is agent and act driven to say,
Yeah,
you know, we want this, we want 9 hotel, whatever it may be, but it's not like that.
alright, so that's,
Does anyone knows, I'm just curious, anyone have any idea what does it cost to go to a really nice show, even at the Thing Center or somewhere? Anyone been?
I
Like,
think he's
paid
right, it's
anything?
act driven.
It
It's,
varies from
Nobody?
act to act.
Oh, okay.
yeah,
It's
I would say-
$650 a pop for Springsteen.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, okay.
if you're talking about Taylor Swift, it's, woo.
It's thousands.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I don't think Taylor Swift.
No, it's just, but you weren't asking about
Yeah,
that, you were
yeah.
asking
Actually
about
got it
the
for,
bigger places. And that's
Okay.
where Taylor Swift does
We
play.
can only hope.
Yeah,
You just have to shake it off.
So much for the Taylor Swift conversation. So first readings only, 021, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a real estate purchase agreement for the sale of certain real property located consisting of approximately 1.049 acres of vacant land on Lancashire Road. This is basically senior housing, 71 units, and money for parking lots. Councilor Jones? Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, were you gonna do a presentation on this, or was this already
That was
done?
up to council, what, how you guys wanted to proceed.
I mean, you know, are these short? Pretty short.
Yeah, we can move it pretty.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, why don't we do that, because people watching,
Yeah.
because then they'll get context for the questions.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming in.
This is both.
So here's the site in question. So this is centered around the Unitarian Church on Lancashire Road there. You can see this is Coventry right here. This is just off of the Coventry Commercial District. There's the vacant Unitarian Church that closed, I believe, just before COVID, if I remember correctly. It had been vacant since. The church congregation merged with their congregation in Shaker. They've been trying to sell that property since then. There's been several attempts over the years now to have a developer acquire it and do something with it. A lot of those conversations also included involved the city lots. So we have, that's lot 30 and lot 4 there. The idea being you need a little bit of a larger site to have enough there to build anything of significance. So again, there's been several attempts over the years, some of it market rate type of product, some of it affordable housing, like is being proposed here. And over the years, the church kind of sent the message that they were really only considering affordable housing projects for their site because it was consistent with their goals and missions as a church as well. And it does dovetail with, you know, some of the goals of the city as well to get new investment, but also offer new housing and new affordable housing as well. There's some of what I just went over. So again, Kevin Brown from National Church Residences, who's the developer in question here, he'll have an opportunity to say a little bit as well. But as an affordable housing project, similar to the Nobility Court project on Noble Road, these are rents that get tied to average median income, 30 to 80%. And this is a LIHTC, a low-income housing tax credit project. So they will be applying for those tax credits through the state. That is an application due in February. So they do need site control in advance of that to be able to move forward with that application for this project. Here's the preliminary draft site plan. Couple of things to note. Parking is an issue since we are talking about two city parking lots. You will see there is some portion of the site that would be retained, 20 spots there for city parking, as well as somewhere around 28 angled in spots that would be created there on Lancashire Road. That offsets a little bit more than half, actually significantly more than half of the permits that are currently in that lot. And if you are able to see in a parking memo that we also provided, there's staff's opinion is, based on our updated analysis, that there's more than sufficient parking capacity in the district to absorb the loss of some of the parking there. So the terms that have been discussed and agreed to in principle is a sale price of $500,000 for the city parking lots due at closing. 306 of which is held in escrow until those parking improvements that we discussed are completed. The 20 spaces there on the site as well as the angled-in parking. That's the approximate value or in cost of those improvements. And then contingencies to closing would be the award of the LIHTCs to NCR for the project, the negotiation, approval, and execution of a development agreement, an easement or approval of a lot re-subdivision to sort of give back those 20 spots back to the city, approval from necessary boards and commissions, and then following the award of the LIHTCs and prior to submission of plans for approvals to our boards and commissions, the NCR and the city will conduct at least one additional community engagement meeting. Council will be directly invited to this meeting, as well as being included in the city's communications because it would be a public meeting open to anyone who would like to attend. This kind of shows where the distribution of the available parking would be throughout the district. It's included in the parking memo that was sent, and I believe Addie posted online as well with the council agenda. You see there's the 20 spots that would be created on site, 28 spots there along Lancashire Road, and there's more than ample parking in the Coventry Garage, and then throughout the other lots in the district, there's varying amounts of capacity there as well. And this kind of shows the numbers behind the map that I just explained, which is also included in your memo as well. How do I exit out of this?
Just do escape on the. Sorry.
I'll go ahead and let Kevin speak a little bit about NCR and the project in general.
Thank you, Brian. You covered a lot of my thunder, I believe, already, but and thank you, Council President Kudu, for the opportunity to speak. My name is Kevin Brown. I'm Director of Senior Housing Development with National Church Residences. Make sure I'm forwarding this. National Church Residences is a nonprofit organization founded in 1961 through a Christian commitment to service. Today, we serve more than 60,000 seniors through a variety of housing options and healthcare services. Based in Columbus, National Church Residences owns and or manages more than 360 communities across 25 states. We are the nation's largest nonprofit provider of affordable housing. In Ohio, National Church Residences owns and or manages 115 properties, including 15 right here, senior communities right here in Northeast Ohio. Our communities can really change the lives of seniors by providing safe, barrier-free housing and by reducing the potential for injuries while allowing residents to age in place. A number of those amenities that help achieve this are listed here. And also on the slide is an example recently completed National Church Residences project in Columbus. So this project, the proposed senior housing is located, as Brian discussed, at 2728 Lancashire Road, adjacent to the Coventry Road Business District. It's a new construction facility and makes use of the vacant and underutilized parcels on Lancashire Road. The 71 apartment facility will serve seniors earning between 30 to 80% of the area median income. The site plan, which you had seen previously, the building as proposed is a 4-story structure with a large amount of community and common area on the ground floor. The project site includes the acquisition of the 2 city-owned parcels to the east and the west of the building, and the project does include the replacement of about 50 parking spaces to help meet the current demand in the area, as Brian had talked about it earlier. Now, the proposed housing, we do feel provides high-quality senior housing to serve an aging population in Cleveland Heights. It's a need that exists within your community, as you all well know. We have been very active in proactively engaging city staff and the community before coming to meet with you tonight. And as mentioned, we will be meeting in the future as the project moves forward. The proposed site addresses the need for area parking while providing the necessary parking for our tenant population on site. And tonight, as mentioned, we are requesting council to approve the city to enter into an agreement to sell the 2 owned city parcels to National Church Residences, facilitating the development of the proposed senior housing. So with that, I am here to address any questions you may have. Hope I kept that short and sweet enough.
Yeah, that's perfect. Questions? Councilman Cobb?
Yes, did you look at any other sites in Cleveland Heights other than this one?
I haven't looked at another site in Cleveland Heights for some time. The site came to fruition, really became available about a year ago, a year and a half ago. We were made aware that it was for sale. As Brian mentioned, I think others had looked at it and it kind of came back around and became available. And we recognized that it was potentially what I would call a competitive site for funding in a high need area. So we pursued it at that time. As far as looking at other comparable sites, no, we did not pursue any other sites that may or may not be available in the city of Cleveland Heights.
And once completed, will this property be exempt from paying property taxes because you're a nonprofit
I
organization?
wish that were the case, but it is not.
Okay,
So because it's senior housing, not, let's say, like providing homeless services or our offices, it's not put into an exempt use. So therefore, it will be forced to pay property taxes. Now, we'll follow I can't quote the number, but state law was enacted last year, the last General Assembly, that said how affordable housing financed through the low-income housing tax credit program is assessed or valued, that sets out the amount of real estate taxes that will be charged for the property.
And that, just wanted to confirm, that was last year.
Was that, okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
And this project, like any multifamily that would be built there, is eligible through the CRA program for a tax abatement as well. Just wanted to point that out, I believe that's a 10-year.
10-year, 100%.
Correct. And that would be true of any multifamily project that would be down there.
Mr. President,
Yeah, go ahead.
and just for clarity for the public, if this is helpful, there is no blanket exemption for property taxes for 501c3s. Our church that we have, we don't pay, but all of our residential properties, commercial properties, absolutely, it's going back and connected to those uses. So the 501c3 doesn't attach itself to any of that property just because a nonprofit owns it. It goes back to the general use for that property, if that's helpful for everybody.
71 units, how many, are they all one bedroom or?
We're proposing all one-bedroom apartments, that's
Okay.
correct.
Any other questions? Yeah,
Of him or
yeah,
in general?
just in general, please.
Sure. So, am I correct that there are two different parcels that were separately appraised?
Correct.
And one of the parking lots was appraised at $500,000 and the other parking lot was appraised at $550,000. So the appraisals are over $1 million collectively. And under this transaction, in the end, I understand you're being given some credit for some of these parking spaces. But the net back to the city from this is $186,000.
Yeah,
196.
194,
Correct.
actually.
500 minus 306.
I did.
Some quick math.
You know, the appraisal is what the appraisal is, and I guess if we wanted to maximize our return transactionally, we'd have a very different project there than this. Frankly, you know, we could rezone it and sell it to Dollar General for a big number. I don't think that necessarily serves the community. And also sometimes those appraisals, knowing it's a larger project, bake in really large city contributions in other ways, whether it be a TIF or grants or other things. So we're kind of in, you know, a difficult spot trying to land on what's the appropriate number to get a good project for the city.
If I may, and I don't know whether this is public knowledge, I saw maybe a press release or an article as the church was being sold for $700,000. Are you able to?
I mean, it is a private transaction.
Okay. I think your organization put out a press release, or maybe it was the Unitarian Church. Are you familiar with that? They quoted a sales price of $700,000.
I'm not familiar with any
Okay.
press release regarding the terms of our agreement, no.
That was all I had.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Mr. President, so just to clarify, this is first reading only tonight,
Right.
Only this one you would refer it. Should council be agreeable to refer it to P and D committee tomorrow?
oh yeah, we could do that. Oh, I forgot about that meeting.
I have a spot for other, I think. The packet's already done, or the agenda's already been posted. But there's a spot for other.
If you so choose to.
Well, the question is, could we put it on the agenda?
I have one for the 26th.
Well, they need this prior to essentially your next.
But the issue is we don't have a 24-hour period to,
Well, hold on.
okay.
I do have number 2 as matters referred to committee
Oh,
on your agenda already.
so why don't we,
it's up to you.
yeah, so I'll do that.
With the hope that at the next meeting, we'll be able to vote on it in time for the application.
I'm sorry, what's the deadline?
Our application deadline is February 27th. That's when we need to submit our low-income housing tax credit application to the Ohio Housing Development Agency.
And our next meeting is the 18th.
And our next meeting is the 26th.
Right, but
I just wanted to let you know.
yeah. I mean, the next one is tomorrow, but yeah, okay. All right, any other questions from council? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate the opportunity.
Just a couple more items here. And, well, I'm just gonna move on. Ordinance number 022, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to take all actions necessary to apply for and accept one or more Northeastern Ohio Public Energy Council 2025 Energized Community Grants. Any question about that? All right, and then an ordinance establishing, 023 is an ordinance establishing salary schedules and position clarifications and other compensation. We don't have that legislation. I don't want to read this into the record, Mr. Law Director, because we don't have the legislation. So do we need to make a motion to remove it?
Yeah, you could make a, excuse me, a motion to amend the agenda at the beginning of the meeting to reflect that this won't be read tonight.
Okay. This is to change the agenda, yeah. Okay. Move on with our agenda. So the Archer study, we don't actually have the Archer study. This is the next item, which was a study of salaries. So we're gonna skip item number 3 and move on to budget update. I know we have a finance committee meeting on February 6th. Do you have any update, Councilwoman Larson?
Council has not received the requested 2025 budget book, October, November, December financial statements, end of year actual balances, 2025 revised capital budget, the Archer compensation study results, 2025 carryover capital projects in 2024, clarification of the city's cash position, unfilled position salary total versus actual salary expenditures, unbudgeted 2025 expenses. Council did agree at the January 22nd Finance Committee meeting that completion of the 2023 financial audit will not realistically be available until March, so the audit results are not a factor in our work to approve the 2025 12-month budget. I will continue asking for the adult audit results until they're provided to council. We will also discuss the timeline for council's approval of the 2025 12-month budget, the mayor's appropriations for 2025 found in ordinance 011-2025, year-end 2025 for fund transfers and Kane Park revenues versus expenses for 2024. The finance committee meets this Thursday, February 6th at 6 p.m. The mayor and his staff have been invited to attend the meeting.
Mr. Horgan, could you possibly let us know if this is doable for Thursday?
I got an additional update.
Oh,
Finance. So I spoke with the mayor as well, and he is looking forward to having additional conversations on Thursday during the finance committee. He confirmed that. So one of the reasons you're not getting a more robust update tonight, and so I just wanted to let you know that prior to that.
Right.
We cut him off, but I wanted you to.
right, I mean, I didn't expect him to be here, but I just wanna know if those things that Councilwoman Larson read off are.
Yeah, and it's a number of those are obviously being compiled into those requests that you had talked about. So hopefully we'll be able to get some more clarity on because I think you'd even talked about at the last meeting, you know, a potential end date to this and when an introduction of an ordinance and approval. So hopefully be able to get a lot of that stuff cleared up, hopefully Thursday.
Okay, well, that sounds good. The next thing we're gonna do is go into executive session. Councilman Cobb, this is your thing.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we go into executive session to consider the appointment of a public official.
Director Zan, can you hang around to the end of this meeting? Because I do have something that's.
I need a second.
Okay.
I need a second.
All right, I have amended budget. That's okay.
Need a second.
I wouldn't got a second.
Overall.
Yeah.
Aye.
Shuda,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Maddox.
Aye.
Russell.
Aye.
Posh.
Yes.
Okay, we're back from executive session. And the next thing on the agenda is the Charter Review Commission timeline. I wanted to discuss this with everybody. I'd kind of rethought this. And make sure Director Hannah gets one of these.
Sounds ominous.
So our goal, as we stated with the charter review, is to get the recommendations on the ballot in November. And although we had a really great meeting a Saturday, not last Saturday, but the Saturday before, and we got, definitely made progress. This is my view, that we need to complete our review by the end of next month and get the buckets to the law department so they can begin their review. And then the law department, by the way, as far as I'm concerned, the law department can, when we finish a bucket, if the law department wants to start looking that over, if that would help expedite things, that'd be wonderful. But I feel, I'm gonna say I right now because I wanna hear what everybody else feels. I feel like we need legislation in June. And the reason is, if there's something that we wanna change, I just think that's too much for August. So if you look at the other bullet points, to do 2 readings in August and get the ballot language submitted to the board the first week of September. I think this is more realistic. I do agree with what was said at the last meeting, which is that this takes longer than you think. It's not something you could go, yeah, we'll probably do it. We probably will struggle with the time, as the Charter Review Commission did. I mean, it's not a criticism. It's just because it's complicated and quite esoteric and requires a lot of scrutiny. So I'm open to what everybody says. This is what I think. Yeah.
I think this is doable. I also think that because that bucket 1 is the biggest of the 5, that if we get that to the law department, correct me if I'm wrong, Director Hannah, that will expedite them having the biggest piece of legislation that we're talking about, give them a chance to look at it even sooner than until everything else is done. So that makes a lot of sense, and is it realistic for you, if you got everything by beginning of April, to be ready to prepare the legislation and give it back to us?
Yes, with the qualification that, there's a lot of progress made at the last meeting. It was long, but productive. And, based upon that and the prior discussions, I think it seems realistic the timetable seems realistic. I think until we're finished with all of the buckets, I made it sort of a note on my page here of, a division between bullets 2 and 3, because I think that before getting to legislation, what we want is to have finalized language for the amendments that council thinks it wants to send to the voters to be prepared and, reviewed and polished and torn apart and put back together if necessary. The legislation itself is not as difficult as the working out the language of the proposed amendments. So I think that's really what you need by June. If we can have that all baked into legislation and we know how many you're doing and we know how it can be presented, et cetera, that's great. But I think it's doable, and I think bucket 1 seems largely reviewed.
Well, that's the goal. So we might want to consider adding a little bit of time to the February 22nd meeting. So we just don't cram too much into March. But that's,
If we know we're gonna have to have another meeting, can at least we get it on the calendar now?
Or we
I don't know if we could
I
make
mean,
it
like, not now, but certainly
ahead of time.
ahead of time.
or can we meet after?
To do this?
Mhm.
No, this is major time.
Okay,
We spent 5 hours
okay.
at Bill asked. I don't think we'd wanna do 5 hours or
Oh,
even 2
Okay.
hours
Oh, no,
after a council meeting.
okay.
I mean, I don't know if anybody have the stomach for that.
No, I didn't realize that was that long, remember I
Oh,
wasn't there.
Okay, yep. So,
Consider those an option.
yeah, for March. Okay, I appreciate that. Council legislative initiatives. I have one more initiative, and I wrote it down. I don't have it in front of me, but I know what it is. I would like council to have a intern program that we, voluntarily participate in. And I do think after looking at the paid interns that for the planning department and so forth, and especially considering what we make, I don't think it's really proper for us to take out, if we're in agreement that we can have interns, and again, it's optional. But I think it's a great opportunity for us to interact with the high school and, possibly beyond the high school. I think it's a great opportunity for young people to add their resume a little bit, their college resume. And I've always enjoyed, I know just personally, I've always enjoyed having student teachers and interns in general. I highly recommend it, but if we were to do it, we would have to pursue it legislatively. So that's what I'm asking permission for. But I'll hear from you.
I mean, it's a great idea, especially if we're involving the high school kids. But I think logistically, it really is gonna impact Addie as opposed to anybody else, because they're gonna be shadowing Addie, I would assume.
Well, they would be shadowing a council person, and they may interact with Addie from time to time. They'd be like, the way I'm envisioning it, they would be, one person would be assigned to a council person if they want to participate. I have no problem, Addie has brought this up before. If Addie wants an intern, that would be wonderful.
Which I will be looking into.
A high school intern or more
Not
like
as
an
a big
intern?
of a college intern.
Okay.
Reaching out to like CSU, John Carroll. He's my alma mater.
Any thoughts? Do I have permission? That's what I'm kind of looking for.
I would like to clarify what they would be doing individually. 'Cause I know in situations like that in the past, it's possible that each of them could have a different experience. So I'd like to know collectively what we would want to make sure that they're leaving with, to make sure that we're all handling them on the same page if we're doing something like. So I'd like to flesh out what that would look like a little bit more before I say anything.
And I would do that in the legislation, but, I was thinking, I would like to see somebody that could help with website, had social media skills, website skills, take notes, attend meetings. I want them to get really what I want, and I don't wanna push this on 6 other people. So I think there should be some flexibility, but I want them to learn about city government from us by shadowing us and having the experience. But there is, I could think of, I'm just the intern I had for the first year I was on council. I remember I had her come to certain meetings and take notes, and then she'd type up the notes for me and that kind of thing. And, she definitely came to some of these meetings, and then, I just talked to her about the meeting afterwards and, answer questions she might have had. She enjoyed it and learned a lot, stuck with it for a year. Anybody else? How many of you would participate in this if there was such a thing?
I would try it out. I don't think it'll be any harm.
So is it just the two of us?
I would.
Oh, okay. Is it a voice on the road?
I'd like to learn more about it and the time commitments required, because you don't really, part of this is, it's almost a mentoring job.
Yeah.
So you have to give a lot of extra time, just not to get help, but to help them understand what's going on.
It is a commitment on the person's part that's having the intern. I was envisioning 5 hours a month. Occasionally if there was, I don't know, some big project or something, a little more, but kids are in school a lot. The kids that volunteer for these kind of things, they tend to be busy. They're you know what I mean? Like they're already like doing stuff. So you wouldn't want to overburden them.
Well, I wouldn't mind for you to put something together and let us look at what your thoughts are.
Okay.
I don't think there's no harm in
Anybody have an objection?
seeing what you
Let's
have.
put it that way.
have.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and do that. So the next item on the agenda is to revise the economic development memorandum of understanding.
Mr. President, was that it for 2025 council legislation initiative?
Unless, I'm sorry, you know what I didn't ask is if anybody else had anything.
What would be I guess the only question I had about that was what our next steps is. What does that look like in terms of how we're launching anything or starting or planning anything? What's the plan for that?
Well, for me, I'm bringing up things so I have permission to go to the law director and start working on stuff. But, I've asked, I think, several times, and just to be clear, I don't want to tell anybody what their legislative initiatives ought to be. I definitely want you to know what mine are, and I'd like to hear what other people's are. I'm, very interested in making sure that the council can navigate all of its legislative functions, and all the legislation that I want to put forward is towards that end, to make sure that we have the information, that we have the ordinance 111 is in line with the needs of this council and hopefully all councils to follow. But everybody else, I'm not here to suggest what other people's legislative initiatives ought to be. So I'm gonna have to explain this because I can't put right. There you go. All right, so on this MOU, and this kind of goes to the Lancashire project.
Do you have more?
Is what,
Sorry, I'm bogarting them all.
yeah, and this is two-sided. Here's what I did. On item number 1 on the process, so I modified number 1 and number 6. So those are the two processes I modified. And what I wrote in was, if there are any public, this sentence in item number 1, if there are any public engagement opportunities by the proposed developer and or the administration before a development agreement is reached, council and the council clerk shall be notified in advance of such a meeting. And I put in parentheses, but I don't know that this needs to be in the MOU. I've just advised council members not to participate. If you do go to a public engagement, we don't want to participate. We don't want any back and forth, especially if there are more than 3 council people there or 2 people from the planning committee. But also because we don't want to, intercede on a pending development, economic development project. But Director Zamp and I had actually kind of touched on this before about the idea of, maybe the developer should do this, but, we kind of mutually agreed that they shouldn't have to do it. But now I feel because sometimes developers may voluntarily do it, I wanna make sure council is notified that there's a public meeting that developers putting on. So if we want to attend, we can. That's the main thing. And then for number 6, and I'm almost done. Number 6, all I did was add the council clerk to this because let's just say, for instance, there's gonna be a public meeting, at Musicians Towers. And it's planned 3 weeks ahead of time. Eddie's the person that on Monday sends out a calendar reminding us of what's going on that week. So I wouldn't want something to fall through the cracks because council was notified, but the clerk wasn't. Go ahead.
No mind.
So what you just added, council clerk?
So on number 6,
The
all I
parentheses.
added was council clerk. Just for clarification, if anybody gets it. Number 6 basically says, after a development agreement, there usually public engagement put into the agreement that it will happen. Hopefully more than once, but at least once. And that council would be notified of that. I just added the clerk to that. And then number 1 is the biggest addition, and it starts with the word if. So it would be the second sentence.
Second sentence on number 1 starts with 4. Am I looking at something different?
Oops, third sentence, thank you. So the sentence again is, if there are any public engagement opportunities by the proposed developer and or the administration before a development agreement is reached, council and the council clerk shall be notified in advance of such a meeting.
I like that you added that addition about not speaking to the public at the meeting. My concern is that it hasn't just been at the meeting. Council members have taken that information and kind of discussed. So I think we need to have some parameters around what that looks like because we've left the meeting and then had those same conversations not at the meeting, in those other settings without clarification. So I'm curious, is this because we could be in a majority in that room? Is that why? Or because we don't want to speak without having all the information? I guess
It's the 2 reasons that, that could be, any kind of back and forth, as our law director tells us all the time, when there's more than 3 people, could constitute a meeting. And then there's just the idea that if it happens at stage 1, by definition, it's a pending deal. And anything we say could possibly interfere with that. So it's really both of those reasons. Mayor, you wanted to say something?
There's a couple questions
Yeah.
for clarification. First is, what if the developer, say, is having a meeting to which members of the public are invited, but it's a particularly curated meeting where they want neighbors of the development to come and they don't want elected officials there?
Well, I mean, do you know of such a,
it's happened before.
It's just a question.
yeah, I mean,
Do you have any particular thought about that and whether or not council should be notified of that meeting?
I think council should be notified.
And should we also make sure that the developer or the administration notifies you that you are not welcome to show up? Or
Well,
if that's the, I mean, if
if
it's a
that was the
particular-
case,
If it's a public meeting?
Well, I mean, it's a private meeting, public meetings
Oh,
can be here, but I'm just saying, like, if certain members of the public are invited, I'm not thinking about any particular example, I just wanna be, I don't wanna get down a road and have something happen and we haven't sort of thought through it without having sort of a tabletop exercise on this a little bit. I just wanna know if the developer does not want electeds there.
actually you bring up a point now that I didn't think of. It should be meeting with the public, not public meeting. I would probably reword this
So
for that reason.
this might be helpful for me. This scenario does happen all the time. Right now, there's a community meeting getting ready to happen in the city of East Cleveland for an economic development project on the city's east end. They specifically requested that no members of council or the administration show up to that meeting. They only want to speak to members of that particular neighborhood. So although it's a public meeting, if you're not on one of 3 particular streets, you cannot come. And so I think that's the kind of scenario where the expectation should still be that council wouldn't show up just because. I think and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the kind of meeting you would
I mean, I wasn't aware of that one, but I was just thinking about a potential future, and I just wanted us to be prepared so that you, as council, are not concerned that we were keeping something from you
Right.
later when it really was the developer's determination of who they wanted at that meeting.
Yeah, and what I also want to avoid is one member of council or just some members of council being notified and not others. Yeah.
I do have a couple of thoughts on this. I do want to start off by echoing what Councilman Maddox and the mayor are saying, because we have, during some of our inquiries, particularly early on, had developers say, we want to meet with those immediate neighbors, we want to see if there's any support for this at all, unencumbered of any sort of other influence. And then, and only then, once we sort of have that checkbox, then we'll move to a larger public conversation. So with that as the ground foundation, I think there's a way, first of all, to do this, to say that we, the administration, should know that this meeting, number one, we may not be invited to it, which is fine. So if it's a meeting that is run solely by the private developer, and they've requested that it's not attended by the administration or the council, then we can inform you of that. We're just letting you know. That would be fulfilling the need of this. And then obviously we can continue to move down the process. But if we're hosting a meeting or partially hosting a meeting, then I can't see how a developer could tell us not to open up to the public.
And so I think, basically like subject to the sort of the invite list or the desires of the host of the meeting. If the developer is hosting the meeting, then they get to select. And that may or may not, cause a problem with any members of council. I'm not talking about this council necessarily, but just as a general idea, if people feel slighted, but that's up to the developer to navigate, not us. But I just wanted to know what the expectations would be of us and sort of clarify that before moving forward. I don't have a problem, providing notice or anything like that if there's something that we're aware of. But if the developer does provide us with sort of instruction or guidance on how they want their meeting to run, and passing that on to you, I would expect that would be respected. But I just wanted to make sure that we consider that possibility, because sometimes it happens.
Okay, I mean, I hear that. Go ahead.
But I have one more question, but unless it was on the same topic.
The same type, but go ahead.
Well, this is sort of a related, but.
This is on the council side of things I was curious about, so.
Okay, the second question that I had, I think we probably need clarity on how council expects to be notified of this. I don't imagine that it's, an engraved invitation. I also don't imagine that it's like, throwing a paper plane at your house or something like that with the date and time and location written on it or something like that, somewhere in the middle. But like, for instance, I think the particular event that spawned this additional conversation was a meeting that was held related to the property over on Lancashire.
Right.
And the developer over there, had a meeting in November 14th, maybe. And there was a concern that council was not notified of this. Now, I don't know how many council members are signed up for the e-news, but it was publicly noticed in the e-news. And so if you are signed up, then you receive that. But, if not, then not. And so I think I'd like some clarity just to make sure that we are using the appropriate method that council needs in order to receive that kind of notification.
An email would be fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm gonna weigh in. The appropriate, I think, way is to send the minimum notice to the clerk, and then the clerk can let us know. I would say that putting notice of something in the city email blast is not the same as giving notice specifically.
Absolutely, and that's fine. I just wanted to get clarity on exactly what the appropriate method would be.
And what I think we want to avoid is what happened with TWG. And sort of is happening now with Lancashire, in that there was a community meeting that was held back in November. And I think it's important, at least for me, to have an opportunity to go to these community meetings so I can get a feel for how many people were there, a chance to talk to constituents, and see, whether it was favorably received or people had questions. And now, 2 months later, the legislation is in front of us. It's
Well, just for clarity, Councilman, I don't think anybody in the administration is in opposition to that
Right.
concept. So that's first of all. Second of all, just distinguishing from TWG, that was a particular set of circumstances where the administration was pretty much uninvolved in the community outreach at the outset.
I'll take it a step further. Lancashire was a meeting prior to any legislation.
Right.
Purchase agreement
Yeah.
would be before you. TWG was after the purchase agreement, prior to the development agreement. So it's very different, but understanding the concerns that council.
Well, actually, there's TWG round one and TWG round two.
Think about
In round one, before we got, I'm sorry, I have to think about this. Before there was a development agreement,
You had a purchase agreement, you approved that, and then afterwards.
right, there
That's
was a
when-
purchase agreement, you're right,
So there's a
you're
distinction.
absolutely right. In between the purchase agreement and the development agreement, there was a meeting that we didn't know about.
Here we,
So I guess my clarification, going along with the mayor, is what this looks like for the members of council. Because sometimes developers don't initiate those conversations with councilors, so they may reach out to individual council members. And so I'm gonna use myself as an example, it happens quite often. So I'll know about a project, I'll walk through, give a sense, before they even reach out to the city, ask me what I'm thinking about that. Several times they've even asked me to host those community meetings in those neighborhoods to get a feel before they're making a move. It's not something they're necessarily ready to announce. They might be still getting a feel for or trying to get additional information for. So I guess I'm trying to gauge what the expectation is for council in terms of this as well. Because sometimes those conversations aren't initiated by the administration. Sometimes they're reaching out to someone they have that connection with. And so I deal with developers all the time. And so I'm just curious about what this looks like. Because in some cases, I may bring those developers or bring that to the administration in terms of what that engagement looks like. So I'm just trying to figure out where we fit into this process and this
Well,
structure.
Again, if a developer doesn't sets up some kind of meeting and they don't contact the administration, how can, it seems self-explanatory, there's no way they could contact, the administration could contact us about a meeting they don't know about.
I mean,
But,
No,
is there any responsibility for the council members to provide?
I'm sorry,
Is there any responsibility for the council members to then sort of provide sort of a reciprocal
that's what I was asking.
information in the opposite circumstance?
Right.
I
I see, if the developer calls us, I didn't even really think about that, and it has happened. I know that in the times that it's happened, I've spoken with the mayor about it in the leadership meetings, but we don't have anything formalized.
Many times for me, the conversation start with me one or two ways. Either they want information about what's happening in that neighborhood or the demographics, or how to initiate that engagement or that side in terms of a need assessment or so. And so at that
Or
point,
lobbying.
I may bring into the conversation administration based on where they are in that project in terms of other folks in the community. I wouldn't necessarily bring that to the council table, but the administration will be aware that someone's initiated this conversation and maybe had neighborhood meetings. So I was just curious about what that looks like, because in my line of work, it's a weekly occurrence that I'm looking at these, not just in our city, but around. So it will absolutely happen to members of the council. So I think some type of process or clarity for that might be helpful, because it's possible that you will hear, I'm in a meeting on a side of town with a developer in the community. So they're assessing this before it's even come to the administration or the council for an actual real project, just because they want to get a sense of what's happening in that neighborhood.
Yeah, so I see what you're talking about as far as reciprocal goes. Go ahead.
I kind of agree with Anthony when it comes to the example he gave. He's dealing with East Cleveland, and East Cleveland is talking about 3 streets. That has nothing to do with council. It has nothing to do with Cleveland Heights. So I wouldn't be expected to be invited unless there was some special reason why council needed to be invited. But I don't see a reason why there should be any restriction on when a developer is having a engagement with the public regardless if it's a small group of people or a large group of people, because we are council members at large. So we represent the whole city. So we are not wards, so we are not defined to one area. So if a developer is, and I guess your wording, turning it around versus, what did you just say? If a developer is having a public meeting,
Or a meeting, I would put it
meeting
with
with, meeting with the public,
Yeah.
any portions of the public, then council should be notified.
And that was what was different for me, that, cause, yeah, a meeting with the public is different from a public meeting, and that's what I
Yes.
wanted
Yeah.
clarification.
Yeah, so that could be switched, that's fine with me, but to just say we can't come to a meeting because they're doing Fairmount and they don't want anybody from outside of Fairmount, we represent Fairmount. So we have a right to hear what the Fairmount residents are hearing, want. So I would think that if you change that around, I think that would be
I think
more
we could
acceptable.
fix this via email. I don't think we need to have a meeting.
Can I-
Go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, just, so I think what we were talking about wasn't so much sort of where a council member represents. We don't have wards yet in this city. And so all of the council represents all of the community. But I think what we were discussing was whether or not when a developer has a particular type of meeting, sometimes, especially in odd years, sometimes the years get odd a little bit. And so you might want to have sort of unalloyed, less alloyed politically discussions with residents who live near a particular development, and uninfluenced potentially by those elected officials that, maybe up for election that year, who knows? And they just sort of want to bypass that. And I respect that. I remember there was an occasion, I think in 2021, where I was hoping to attend a meeting where residents were being asked for feedback about certain things. And I went to this meeting. I was thinking to myself that I represent all of Cleveland Heights. This was when I was a council member, obviously. And I was asked to leave. I was escorted out because the person who was organizing that meeting did not want electeds at that meeting, certainly not electeds that were running for something. And I had to respect that. I didn't love it because I wanted to hear what the residents had to say, but I had to respect that. And so I think in this case, maybe that's something that we should at least be cognizant of so that we can, not hold it against the developer or the administration if council members are told, maybe this is a meeting that we are aware of happening, but this is something that is specific for the, this particular circumference around, a proposed development, and they're requesting that, elected officials, politicians, maybe even administrators who are not elected, not attend. And so I want us to manage our expectations because those may, come up. And so we might not even be notified of those things. And so if council hears about a meeting to which you were not about which you were not notified or to which you were not invited, I just want us to keep in mind that we may not, have that either because of the nature of certain meetings. So I just wanted us to sort of talk about that now so that it doesn't surprise us later should that eventually come up.
Well, I mean, if you're not notified, I understand that, but I would not want the administration to encourage a developer to exclude council. I mean, that would be, to me, not desirable. Go ahead.
Yes, and I think what the meeting the mayor is referring to was totally different. We're talking about a developers meeting, and if the developer is communicating with the public. That was an educational meeting, and that was the request of the residents in that area, just like Councilman Maddox indicated, where the East Cleveland area wanted to only identify those three streets. That's the same thing that happened, and that was the request of the residents there who actually paid for that meeting.
I understand.
So that's totally something different of what we're talking about, those oranges and apples. We're talking about a developers meeting here, actually having a meeting with the.
All right, so we'll work this out, you know, just wordsmithing, I think will be,
Can you send me, or you'll send a Word version of this?
yes, of course. Ready? All right, we do have other on here. Is there anything else? Yes, Councilman Cobbs.
It's my night to talk. So I had a resident that reached out to me, just requesting council members when we have committee meetings, and I'm probably guilty of this, and we're referencing documents or we're using documents at our committee hearings, to please have the clerk of council publish all of those documents on our website. So just please make sure we're doing that, and maybe just as a matter of course, if we could ask Addie anytime people are asking the copies be made, that she just, even if the council member fails to ask her to do it, that they get posted.
Okay.
Is that all right with everybody?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great suggestion. I've just got several residents asking for the document we were just reviewing now in the revisions, and they couldn't find any attachments, and they wanted to know why it wasn't added. And so anything that we can do to add those documents we're discussing would absolutely be helpful.
Yeah, can we, I mean, in this, just for today, and then we'll try to get them posted ahead of time, can we retroactively put these?
Oh, yeah, we can always put
Okay.
them, yeah, we can always put them after.
So the two documents that I passed out today will be added to the agenda items that were already posted. All right, is there anything else? Kind of like got this 5-minute pad here, which is nice.
Well, I did want to at least take this opportunity to pass out, and I emailed electronic copies, which can of course be attached and posted by the clerk, of the report of the classification and compensation study by Archer, and also the proposed wage and salary ordinance redo. I'm sorry it took so long, sort of figuring some things out up until the last minute. But so we have printed copies for you, and we also have the electronic copies that were emailed to all of you and the clerk.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, we can pass those.
What time was those emailed?
6:52.
Relatively shortly, just recently. Like I said,
Six what?
52.
6:52.
like I said, dealing with some last minute sort of adjustments at the very end there.
It's all one.
Now, luckily, this isn't on first reading passage or anything like that. So, just pass these down. This is the,
Just so you know, we are removing it from the agenda.
as you wish, it's council's prerogative, but,
These are all
wait a
just
minute.
individual.
I think I might have, make sure that I've got everything attached. Here we go. Want to make sure all the exhibits are there, but either way, you guys have it.
Yeah.
And so you can take a look and move forward with it.
So Mayor, would you like to put on the agenda for the committee of the whole on the 18th? Did you want to do some kind of presentation?
Well, I think it would probably make more sense for you to just have a committee meeting and discuss it, whether or not you read it into the record tonight. Instead of waiting, why wait?
To,
Just schedule a committee meeting to discuss it. Wasn't it gonna be sent to committee?
yeah, well, probably, but the thing is, if we would have had this ahead of time, we might have asked questions today.
You might, but I'm just saying, you can certainly ask the questions at a committee meeting instead of waiting until the 18th. What is it, the 3rd?
Yeah,
I have a quick question, Mayor.
Sure.
The actual survey report itself lists exhibits 1 through 4.
Yeah, we're gonna have, and that's the other piece. I think that you should call Archer in because those are items that they would have to bring to you.
Gotcha, okay.
This is part of,
again, for the 18th?
I don't imagine that you would have this committee meeting on the 18th.
No, but, oh, you're saying have Archer come to the committee meeting.
Come to administrative services.
extra all of this to
Fine. Administrative
services.
service?
Thank you.
Administrative services, yeah.
and let them discuss it there, that's what I'm saying.
Well, administrative services doesn't meet until the last week of the month anyway, so,
But that's not, that's a choice.
well, it is.
It's a, I mean, I'm not saying that you have to, I'm just
Yeah,
offering it as a suggestion.
Councilman.
Okay, so the biggest thing I think looming for us is the budget. And it's great to get these. Is there some place in here that actually tells us what the impact is gonna be for the budget?
I think that you should talk to Archer about the impact of their study first. They can give an explanation of sort of the ramifications of doing certain things in certain scenarios. I think you should hear it directly from them. And that's another reason why it would make sense maybe just to have an administrative services, not even to discuss the legislation, but to discuss the report. Now, obviously, council can take as long as it wants to on this. I'm not trying to rush you or anything like that.
Councilman Cobb, what do you wanna do?
Let me look at my calendar, but so for example, at page 11 of the Archer report, it says, "We provided the city with detailed reports under separate cover detailing some of the potential payroll costs." Can we get those?
I don't think that those were necessarily sent to me. I'll have to take a look for that, but I think also that those were not updated as far as I'm aware in response to the final report, so that's why I wanted you to get it directly from Archer. So that you're getting the absolute most updated information from them directly. You don't have to rely on the administration for that.
Well, if I'm gonna refer to your committee, Councilman Cobb, then we'll leave it on the agenda if you're gonna.
You can have them talk about it. If you wanna just have like the actual study to talk about first, you don't have to do that.
So we don't have to read the legislation.
If you don't want to, you can.
Well, I don't like the idea of reading legislation when we haven't seen it first. Because sometimes people want to ask questions on first reading, and obviously we can't do that now. So,
You can give some dates.
yeah, since
Since
we could put it
on a doodle poll, I really think so. We're not having to reinvent the wheel. This is probably a meeting that I think all of council, because it's got some significant financial ramifications that all of council will wanna.
and it's on the list for the finance committee as one of the
Asks.
yeah.
Well,
It'd
you've
been
got
nice
it,
if
you've
we'd
got it.
known this, cause we could have asked Archer to come in way prior to this, just to give us the information of their findings.
Well, my hope, as I said repeatedly, was that you would see it in the context of an update to the wage and salary ordinance. And so now you have both of those documents. Whether or not you, I guess, read it into the record or remove it from the agenda, I guess if you guys remove it from the agenda and do not read it into the record, that's fine. I guess then I'll post this on the website so that people can take a look at it, absent council's inclusion of it on the agenda,
Okay.
in the agenda packet.
All right, is there anything else? All right, this meeting is adjourned at 7:31.